Okay, good evening, everyone. Somebody's at the door, won't be a minute. Bella's coming back. Anyway.
Hi, Rebecca.
Oh, Rebecca. Apologies for absence, please.
Yeah, Chair, it's Councillor Townsend Jones.
Okay, thank you. Declarations of interest? No, thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting. Everyone happy with that? Thank you. Item number 4, appointment vice chair. Have we, anyone offering their services?
I'll do it if no one else wants to do it.
Very express interest.
All right, okay. Is Gary? Gary's not here.
No.
But yeah.
It's not here, and we haven't received anything.
Mm.
It's been on the agenda for a few meetings.
Happy
We had a previous meeting which we weren't forward, so okay, we've got one nomination for Will.
Sorry, Rebecca's saying that she thinks Gary wants to do it, so I'm happy to sort of step aside for that. But she's not here, obviously. So Rebecca is suggesting that we nominate Gary subject to her agreement.
Yeah.
No, we won't nominate anyone if no one there to. What we'll do is we'll put it forward to the next meeting. Please, any further?
Perhaps do it.
Yeah,
I just get the door. 1 sec.
okay. And we're very fortunate this evening. We've got the able RFO. And we have the budget monitoring report up until the 30th of June 2023. I'll hand it over to you, Paul, please.
Okay, thanks, Chair. If I can just explain some of the background to this, it was when my appraisal was done last November, I think it was, there was an item included in that appraisal for me to raise councillors' awareness of finance, including budget monitoring. So I think this is probably the first chance we've had to get for me to attend all committees to do this. So that's what I'm going to try and do this month. So what I really want to do is just give you some background to budget monitoring, what it is. I know it's probably very basic, but the reason for it, I think, is that certainly I've seen in the past, and I'm sure Steve when he was attending meetings as well, saw a lot of meetings where the budget monitoring report, finance report was the last item on the agenda. It just got nodded through. Or in some cases, even some councillors said, well, Paul will look after that for us, which I will. You know, I will raise issues with committees, but it is committees' responsibility to look at budget monitoring and to deliver the budget that is approved by council in January each year. Because that's what the budget does. It allocates money to committees, and it's up to the committees then to spend it, and then to monitor how it's spent. Because I think there's two real issues you can have with a budget. You either overspend or you underspend. Very rarely will you get a budget which is bang on. So what you need to do is, where there's an overspend, is to find out why. Many reasons. Could be that the budget was wrong in the first place. It could be things have changed over the course of the year. It could be something's been charged against the wrong budget. But unless a committee looks at those budgets on a monthly basis, then you don't really know. And there is a financial regulation which says that if a budget can't overspend by more than 10% without the approval of council. So there is an issue there which potentially could be identified by our auditors. So it is important that committees do monitor their budgets on a regular basis. What I send each month is a budget monitoring report, which compares the actual expenditure and income to the end of that month against the budget for the year. And then the final column in that budget monitoring report shows you the over or underspend. So that's the column you need to be interested in. In particular, I think there's things like, as I said earlier, where it overspends or underspends, especially in terms of schemes which may not have started. And if say it comes to December and something's not started, then some action is needed. Pretty sharpish to get things done. I think one of the ones within Finance Committee's budget, which is typically underspent over the last years, is evaluation. There's £3,000 in that budget for evaluation of the council. We had some work done maybe 4 years ago, probably pre-COVID, but I don't think there's been much since that. So I think that's a potential area where the committee may want to look at, say what are we going to spend it on, what evaluation needs to be done.
I think not too, Paul. I think the last time that was actually used was when we were using that chap to do the
Alan Thomas.
Alan Thomas. That's
Yeah.
the Welsh Alan. Yeah, Alan Thomas. It did come up on budget setting previously, the past couple of years actually, and it was felt prudent to keep it in the budget. So if it's renewed at different junctures, surely there's nothing wrong in that, is there?
No, well, there isn't, but I guess the money that's in the budget is precept, is taxpayers' money, and that's what council has decided to spend it on.
Okay.
It's obviously within the role of this committee. If it decides we don't want to spend anything on evaluation, then you can go back and tell council that, and then you would also free that budget up then for environment. So you could use it on something else, or the council could use it on something else within the council's environment policy. So I think I think the worst thing would be if something is in the budget and then it gets to March, and nothing's happened, it's not been discussed, and it's just an underspend. So I think that's what I'm trying to get committees to do now, is to avoid those sorts of situations. You can actively make the decision not to spend it, but then it should then be decided then whether it's going to be via to something else or whether it just goes back into the contingency or into the reserves.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, the other reports I send then is a list of all the expenditure transactions and all the income transactions. So that should, if you do see an overspend or want to know what's been spent, then you can look at that report and you can see exactly who's been paid from that budget. So I think that's what committees should do. Should be looking at any areas of over or underspend. Oh, sorry, Gary.
Sorry, Paul, just wondering if it might be worth explaining to the members what the purpose of the general fund is, just so they've got an understanding of how that comes into play at year end.
We have got a cost centre called general fund. Is that what you meant, or?
Yeah, normally what you find is at the end of the year, say for example, if there is let's say there was a budget that had 20,000 in it, but we actually only spent 15, then that money at the end of the year normally goes into what's called your general fund, and that general fund will fluctuate year on year, so it will either go up or down, because when you've had an overspend in your budget, sometimes some of your overspend will come out of that general reserve at the end of the year to balance out the budget, if that makes sense. So you have earmarked reserves and then you have general reserves, and the general reserves is the one that will go up and down each year, depending on whether you've had unders or overspends. So, sorry, I've just explained it myself.
That's okay, fine, thanks for that.
Yeah.
The other thing we have got, which I don't know what I've mentioned to you, is we've also got a contingency, which is 10% of the council's budget. So that tends to be the first call on any overspends or on any new schemes which come in. So there is that opportunity as well, where any underspends could go to, or if you do have underspends, that's where they could be funded from. But I think the environment policy does says it should be from the committee's budget initially. But if that's not possible, then it should be from the contingency. So I think what I'm trying to encourage committees to do is to look at those reports, look at any over or underspends and ask questions. There can be action points arising out of each committee. You know, you can ask me questions. Well, you know, why is evaluation nil, or why does it look as if we're underspending on small or medium grants when we know we've approved grant allocations. So I think that the worst thing that happens is that the reports go every month and then nothing happens. So I think what committees need to do, or what I'm encouraging committees to do, is really to take some action to look at those reports and to ask questions.
Yeah.
So whether anybody's got any questions on budget monitoring, I can help with either now or as an action point arising from the committee.
Okay, well, I've got a question ready.
The 2,000 for Mumbles traders.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Is that the first payment?
That's I think that's the first payment. I think we're making about probably 4 or 5 different payments over the course of the year.
Yeah, so that welcome to summer event then.
Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah, we have paid more since then for subsequent events. The motor show, I think they have another road closure as well. And there'll also be money for the Christmas. So the 8,500 will be spent over the course of the year. Obviously, I think the committee and the council didn't want to just give one lump sum up front. So the Paul Whittaker put forward his spending plans and included an amount for each event. So we pay those out when in the month prior to each event.
Yeah. If I can just bring Angela in now, please.
Hi all. Sorry, just about the Paul's Mumbles Traders money. Is the 8,000 something pounds that he's having increased from 2,000? Why does it say it says 8,000 and something? I sort of read that and thought it had gone up by 6,000 something. Is that right?
No, the annual budget for Mumbles Traders is 8,500. And to the end of June, we've spent 2,000, so we've given them 2,000. So the 6,500 is what's remaining to be paid to them over the course of the year.
Oh, right, and he spreads that out, and because obviously he must need more than that, but largely that's going on the road closures, is it, for every event?
Yeah, I think it's about 5 events that he's organising, and he put forward an amount that he wanted. I think it was significantly more than 8,500. The original amount he put forward, it was neither. I think it's 12 or 15.
Yeah, because I'm wondering how he even does as many as he does with that money, because there's not really many people seem to even go to the events. I don't know whether it's worth scaling back some of the events to make each event better.
Well, that's up to Mumbles Traders and Paul himself. It's not something all the councillors agree to do is to fund him 8,500.
Yeah, okay, no worries, thank you.
Rebecca?
Just going back to the previous point that was made about evaluation, I think the reason we get to the end of the year and haven't spent the evaluation budget is that it's quite difficult to evaluate retrospectively. You need to have decided what you want to evaluate before the thing you do, so that you can then answer that question after the thing has happened. And I'm just wondering whether actually one of the things that goes round and round this table is our grants scheme. You know, how effective is our grant making? What impact is it having in the community? You know, we've said we wanted to get more reports from our grant recipients. Maybe this could be an opportunity, because Andrew's point there about not many people go. I mean, that's not my experience, but obviously our individual experiences are in snapshots, aren't they? If we did a proper systemized evaluation, that could be quite good use of money, and it would perhaps drive up value for the grant they can do next year.
Well,
Yeah, I prefer to give them a grant of £2,000 a month, but we'll do that. We're not going to spend it. We don't have any real use to it.
We do want to know that we're getting value from money from our grants, though, don't we?
I think we are. I think we wouldn't like to do a grant.
Oh, no, it's not good.
Yeah.
I think it's a valid point. You know, there have been occasions when I felt that was all you've got to do is come along and
Yeah.
fill in the form, and then you're going to get a grant. But you know, there's a little bit more to it than that. We should be looking in greater depth, and I agree with what you've said about the fact that you know, we need to analyze what's been good about the actual grant. So we have spoken about that, but we've never committed to it. I think the test we had with the West Cross Youth Club, the first occasion, we gave a grant of £5,000. Then we were approached then to set it for a 3-year period with tranches of £5 each consecutive year. And I thought that was a good way to do it, but it had proven its worth, really, the West Coast Youth Club. Not that I've attended, but the feedback that I hear, it seems to be pretty popular and worthwhile. Some of these other grants for the Keep Fit and so on, there were a few of them came out of the blue, but then they've never really
When it comes to monitoring the grants, so we have got, you know, a number of staff at the community council, and yeah, everyone's busy, but you know, it could be built into someone's job to follow up on those. You know, it doesn't have to be outsourced.
No, it shouldn't be outsourced. No, it should be done in-house. Go on, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. What I was going to say is that we have started putting in our terms and conditions for each grant in the last year or so, is that they should be providing a report at the end of each grant, a written report, which shows what the money's been spent on and what impact it's had, in particular on the community. So that is something that we do need to follow up on. So I'm not. The only one I know that regularly does that is Sculpture by the Sea. They always send in something at the end of each year. So we do need to get someone to chase those up on a regular basis to make sure we get those reports in, so we have that information available.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that's on the budget. We paid them up to 3,000. I think it was back in June.
Yeah, 3,200, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
I think you got the point there, Ian, because, you know, there are things that we see, and there are things, you know, which are very obvious, like the monks traders and
Yeah.
West Cross Youth Club, which, you know, so it provides something for the whole community, not just
Yeah.
one wall. And they're very easy to see. For us to council, just sort of feeling whether or not we're getting, you know, something for the money. But yeah, I do, you know, where there's something like Sculpture by the Sea, which is not something I've in the past. I know it's happened, but it's not something that I've seen myself personally, as it were.
Yeah.
You know, it's nice to have that feedback. Perhaps we should do a little audit of what's been outstanding for the last year or so, and just give them a nudge.
Yeah, I don't see anything wrong in that. The other one, I think that with the fun days, I can always talk about the Highmead one that's held at Highmead Park in Newton, Stroke, West Cross. There were a few things there that came up, that it would be good to have a post-mortem after each one to highlight those areas. You know, for example, Highmead Park, there are 2 key entrances, one at the top of the park and one at the bottom of the park. So when you're trying to monitor the number of people, which is an important point, you've got to allocate 2 people to do that task, because they're about 150 meters apart. That's just a small thing, something like that, though, but because the fun days, they are a project that's really grown, I think. And it's proved to be very popular.
And talking of evaluation, that's
Yeah.
something that obviously City and County, to evaluate their grants, you know, but
Yeah, we should be able to hand something over to them and say, you know, we go to the, not the trouble, but we go to the length of taking the number of people that are there. And, so I think
whether we can take a leaf out of their book and see what their evaluation would be for.
Well, I mean, it's relatively light touch. I think probably the most complicated bit is accounting for all the expenditure, which we're indebted. Paul's expertise on that really, but the narrative is, you know, we sort of give a bit of narrative, and we do some data monitoring in terms of demographics of who comes. But I would say that it's only as good as the chase up. So what City and County do well is that they email you the deadline, and then just before the deadline they remind you, and on the day of the deadline they're like, where is your report? So it's building in that, like, you know, making sure we actually get people to return whatever it is that we ask for, I guess.
I do think we should monitor these fun days though, and other folks watching, because they're growing all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably to the events committee to do, I suppose.
Well, I think,
With them.
yes,
They've fallen under the community and social umbrella for the
yes,
last
they're on their budget.
3 years, haven't they? So yeah, I'm certainly there will always be crossover between every group and events.
Yeah.
Environmentally as well.
Yeah.
Could I suggest, Kerry, what we seem to be talking about here is monitoring of the grants, which I think we can build in internally, can't we, to chase up at some point. There's no immediate rush, but I'm sure you can come up with something for us to do that, and also for the events committee or Claire or Rob or someone to do post-mortems as Ian suggested on all the fun days, and then we carry those forward and put them in notes or something for next year.
Yeah, can we call them debriefs instead of postmortems?
Yeah, good
Sounds
idea.
sounds a bit morbid.
That would sound like I'm saying that post-mortem, yeah.
Silent,
Yes. Yeah, good idea.
yeah. Debrief, that's the wordage. Okay. Everyone had their say there?
Yeah, but no questions from me, Paul.
Okay, thanks. So I'm looking forward to loads of action points at the next meeting.
Right. What have we got on the agenda?
Number 6, budget 24, 25.
What do you want to say about the 24-25 budget, Paul?
Yeah, what I want to do is just outline a bit, maybe the timetable first, because you really should have had a report earlier in the year on this, but the way I would like to see it done is the budget be approved at the scheduled council meeting on the 9th of January. We have done that once in the past. Sorry?
I said not in my time as a councillor.
Oh, it has, yeah. I'm sure it was in the main hall in the Ostream. We talked about I think we talked about the Ostream Centre first. We had Chris Timanovsky was there. So that, no, it has happened once. The other option is obviously to have a special meeting, and it went right to the wire last year. We had a special meeting on the 31st of January, and they were due back on the precept, and the budget was due back to Swansea Council on the 31st of January. Which we did get in time, but it's a risk. So what I would like to do is to get a report to the scheduled meeting in January, council meeting in January. But what that means is that obviously with Christmas in December and all committee meetings likely to be not held in December, that means that as committees have to approve the budget that's to be recommended to council, it would have to be approved at the November meeting, which is this meeting, next month, and then the following month. So there isn't a great deal of time to do that There are other options. You could hold meetings early in December. You could call a meeting in the first 2 weeks of December, and hopefully you would get some people, some councillors around to attend. Or you have to do it as we did last year, in the budget being approved by the January committee meeting, and then having the council meeting right at the end of January. But as I said, I think that's a risk. It's not a significant problem, but it does mean that there's a risk of us missing the deadline. So what really should happen is that committees this month should be looking at their budgets, what's been spent, what's likely to be repeated next year, what new proposals do you want to put forward, if any, or what budgets do you significantly want to increase next year, or what budgets do you want to decrease, is the other option. Where there's a new proposal or where there's a significant increase, committees will have to complete a budget proposal form, which I'll circulate this week, which gives the details of that proposal, what the budget is, what the planned budget is. But it does mean some work is required to put that budget together. So that needs to be factored in over the next couple of months. I think the year before last, what we did, which was I think proved to be very useful, was earlier in the middle of December, we had what we called a budget scrutiny meeting, where all new proposals or increases, so any budget proposal forms were reported to a council meeting, which was called a budget scrutiny meeting, and every chair then of the committee who wanted to put a proposal forward, or indeed any councillor who wanted to put a proposal forward, filled in the forms, and then they had the opportunity to present that to council. Councillors had the opportunity to ask questions. So when we got to the budget setting meeting, councillors were much more informed of what those proposals were. So I think that was a very useful exercise when we get it. So I would like to repeat that this year, as long as we can find an appropriate time for that meeting. And I just thinking about this committee's budget. I think your biggest issue going forward is obviously the Ostream. So what budget do you need to include for Ostream redevelopment next year? And maybe that's something that you could ask the Ostream working group to put a proposal forward. And other things then in terms of the Ostream is things like income. You've got the opportunity to review that income and increase it or keep it as it is. But I think those are the sorts of issues. That's probably the significant issues which you need to consider as part of your budget for next year.
Thank you. I think Paul will in.
Yeah, thanks. Paul kind of answered my question at the end. I was going to ask about the Ostream and how we'd if it's in this committee or something else. But I think it was agreed when we first started that it's in here.
Yeah, it is in this committee.
Yeah. So if for example, I know Down to Earth trying to get grants and stuff, and they've been quite successful with some early conversations, which is good news. Nothing committed, but good conversation, I understand. And if we want to commit some match funding, I don't know what the mechanism for talking about that is. Is it, I suppose, the working group talking to Down to Earth and then talking to yourself and Kerry and presenting something to this group? Is that the?
Yeah, well, myself and Kerry are part of that working group now. That was agreed at council last week. So I think it's the working group to come up with that sort of proposal to put forward to finance and compliance, and then on to council.
Cool. So we'll put that on the agenda for the next working group, I suppose.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Rebecca? Sorry.
I just wanted to support the budget scrutiny meeting suggestion. I think that was invaluable the year we did do it. The other thing, I'm sorry if you did mention the form, I'm at the end of the long day. But the form that you send round.
Yeah.
I found it quite helpful to be quite strict with each other about how much detail we put into that, because if you don't put the detail in, like at the earliest stage, you get to the budget setting meeting in January, and short meeting as it is, and anything that's not got the detail in, just, it's a reason to leave it out, isn't it, when it might have actually been a really good idea. So I think that's probably a good message to send to all of us, is just, you know, to get that detail in.
Yeah. Kerry?
Oh, can I just ask, because I haven't seen the form you're talking about, does that include to draw councillors' attention to the you know, the legal implications of what the budget they're requesting, officers' hours, and also if we could consider the Future Wellbeing Generations Act and Section 6 implications as well this year?
They're all on there already.
On that.
Certainly the
Perfect.
well-being ones are. I'll send the form to you tomorrow, Gary.
Great,
Send
thank
last
you.
year's form to you.
Just
Yeah,
to-
perfect.
if the officer hours is in there, I don't think it's good enough visibility. 'Cause that's something
No,
else.
sorry, no, the officer hours isn't, but certainly the well-being is. So before it gets sent out, we can agree that amongst ourselves.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
sorry, now
Sorry,
that,
Rebecca, go on.
now that we're up to full staff, you know, we are up to 100%, aren't we, of like potential capacity we've got. So that, you know, I think backing that in is really important, so that we do deliver everything we say we're going to deliver that in.
Yeah, the only reason I was saying about officers' consideration is that Lydia has got 25 projects on the go at the moment. You know, so I think drawing councillors' attention to you know, making them think about the implication on officers' hours will be really good focusing for them, because Lydia is at like stretching point at the moment, so she's quite, you know, she's at capacity. I don't think she can take on any more projects until she's offloaded some of these 25 she's got on the go at the moment.
I find that somewhat alarming that she should have that volume sitting on her books. We've had this issue with previous environmental engagement officers, and they've literally burnt themselves out. So, you know, who is channeling all these jobs through? You know, because they need to take account of the volume of work and pressure that she's under.
Yeah, so there is a working plan for the environmental group. Obviously, since I've come on board, I've started to offer all of the staff support as and where they need it. Lydia's actually on annual leave this week, so we've got a meeting scheduled for next week to catch up on where she is and what support she actually needs from me, helping her go forward. I am also meeting with our HR advisor on Wednesday, in particular to discuss Lydia's role at the moment, so there will be developments happening there as well.
Well, whatever response we come up with on this, everyone needs to be aware of the fact that, you know, each individual, whatever position they're holding within the council, you know, there are limitations. And personally speaking, I don't see any room for employing any more. So we have to manage the workload that the individuals are getting. So I don't know.
No, I appreciate what you're saying, and you know, as I said, it is discussions that do need to happen. There are wider implication discussions of when you've redeveloped the off stream as well with regards to staffing, because as you recognise, and now you have got staff who are at capacity. There's not only Lydia who's at capacity, there are other members of staff who are like Paul, for example. He's, you know, been extremely supportive over the past couple of months prior to myself coming into post. Paul still has quite a lot of work on his plate. I'm trying to encourage Paul to have a better, you know, I want all the staff to have a work-life balance. I don't want anybody being made ill by the capacity of work they've got. So it is something that I am very aware of, and you know, there are discussions that are happening within the personnel group about this.
Yeah, I think we'll discuss this any further is getting us into a personnel discussion, but I think the points have been well made.
Yes, as long as whichever individual wants addressing they need to be comfortable with the space that they're in. And if they are feeling that they're being overloaded, they have to say so. And they have to speak to their mentor on that. And adjustments have to be made. And if that doesn't resolve it, we'll have to go through the personnel and quite right. Okay, all right, and well, I've made a note of January for you, Paul. With the Austrian, it's an unknown quantity at the moment. But personally speaking, I'm very aware of the commitment that we have made so far. And I don't see any reason why we ought not to continue on that way. But so much is dependent on what Down to Earth can come up with as far as the funding goes. Well, someone was upwards on that front, and I just have to.
It's positive, isn't it? It's very exciting.
It is very exciting, yeah. We'll have to see where it goes. Anyway, is there anything else you want to say on the budget, Paul?
No, the only thing I would just to repeat, if we are to hit that scheduled January meeting, then your options are to agree the budget to be proposed to council at your November meeting, or to hold a meeting early in December. Other than that, if it goes to January, then obviously the scheduled meeting won't be hit. It'll be a special meeting towards the end of the month. So I'd encourage you to, if possible, recommend your budget to council at the November council, November committee meeting.
Okay. All right.
So if that's resolving to do that meeting in part of it in December then.
Yeah.
When would that be off the top of my head? No, but we.
Yeah. Oh.
The laptop is turned off at the wall. I can see the battery go.
Yeah, I was watching that.
Oh, right. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rebecca. We've got a provisional date of the 18th of December in the calendar, but that was just put in, I think, just to.
Also agree the budget is November. It's quite. I know it's a big,
20th of November, the date for November.
It's the Austrian question, isn't it?
Just come in there if that's okay. So what when Paul was saying what he wanted, I was looking at the dates, and if Paul sends out that form this week to everybody and asks for this committee to have their first round of budget work back by the end of this month, that will give Paul time to work that into a workable first draft of your committee's budget. It will give me time to call a meeting of the Austrian working group and speak to Down to Earth to get their feelings on where they think they are with funding. So in October you could have a first draft of a look at a budget, and then if you wanted to tweak that up or down, and then in November, then you the 20th of November meeting, you then we make those changes, bring it back to the November meeting, and then hopefully at the November meeting you approve it ready then for the January meeting. It is quite a lot of work for Paul to do with all the committees, because what you'll find when you get to council as well, although all the committees agree, once you pull all those budgets together, it could be a significant increase that then council are debating and different things like that. So this is why I can understand why Paul's wanting to get the work scheduled done and agreed and already. I personally have always had my councils agree their budgets in the December. So before it's given a month leeway before you've had to submit to the unitary authority. So if there was any changes that needed to be made, you've got that little bit of grace period there. So yeah, I support Paul fully in what he's saying with regards to his timetable.
Yeah.
My observation is that our budget is reasonably static, with the exception of the question of
Yeah, the stream is the unknown quantity.
And
So we can sort of sign my, sorry.
exactly, and realistically speaking, that it would then come back to the steering group to advise us really as to whether that was a realistic. Anyway, no, yeah. Unless there's another project, but even particularly, you know, we fall under plan and comply.
Very relaxed this year. I was also just going to make the more general point that I think it's all about, you know, what you were saying, it's all about the finance, the monitoring reports end up being at the end of an agenda. Also, the budget setting process until January ends up being at the end of an agenda, and maybe we have to say in October and November's meetings, it's the first thing on each committee's agenda. And you know, yes, we accept this, we want to keep business as usual going, but it's such an important process to do well, isn't it?
Sounds like you're making a recommendation for the council.
Okay. Not that.
Yeah, I agree, Becca. That's a very good point. It should be very early on the agenda of the committees in the next 2 months, anyway.
Okay. Does that need a recommendation for council, or can we just?
I don't think it needs a recommendation. I think it's up to the chair to set the agenda.
And we've got the two relevant officers who support agenda setting in the room with us, so we can convey my message to them.
Right. We're finished with the budget. If you're going to stay for a little while, Paul, maybe it may be helpful.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
For those that perhaps wondering why the skate park would be on the agenda, it's an item that came about with the skate park support group, and I inquired as to what its purpose was. And once I looked a little bit closer, there were a couple of alarm bells that came up, and it was the fact that what the requirements that were laid down when the grant was given by the lottery, and how important it is to fulfill those requirements and conditions. And if one wasn't to do that, the penalties could be somewhat severe, to say the least. You might have to pay the money back. So I was very concerned, and I wondered if surprised all these come back at me. So the council is getting pretty chilled at the moment, I would suggest. But it is such an important matter, and to be honest, I didn't know what the requirements, excuse me, or the conditions were that were laid down with regards to the grant that was given. Plus the sum of money. Well, you know, you made that showed that on the letter, Paul, and that's my question would be, and was at the time when I spoke with Kerry, is well, what will happen when the grant has been spent? And you know, as a council, I'm not aware that any decisions have been taken on that front. Can you confirm or not that the grant money has been spent in total, or not quite?
Not at the moment. The capital money has been spent, and everything in terms of the documentation is now in place. So we're just waiting for that payment to be made from the National Lottery. The revenue funding, we've received 2 installments. They're paying on a quarterly basis. But I don't think, and I think that was the concern really, was that there wasn't anything really happening in terms of spending the revenue money. But I know now that the skate park steering group has been set up. So I would expect that now to take control of spending that money, and I would hope that that it will be spent. I would make the point that it's not unusual for grants to be for there to be a requirement for them to be repaid if you don't spend it on what you're supposed to spend it on, or if you don't spend it at all. I think that's likely to be in every grant terms and conditions. If you don't do what you asked for the money for, then they will want it back. So I don't think that's unusual, Chair.
I was just going to ask, what's the progress in terms of the steering committee? Do we have an up-to-date update, as it were?
Yeah, so obviously come into the back end of this project, so had no involvement with any of the project, and then was asked to form a steering group. I've formed the steering group, and the steering group have actually met this week. There are actions that have come out of that meeting. That the purpose of the steering group they will go and look at all the actions that need to be done, and then they will make a recommendation back to full council, and then full council will decide on which item they take from the recommendations that the steering group have made. The steering group is formed of a mixture of individuals and groups that have been that were identified at the stage of applying for the lottery funding. So for example, there's representatives from the skate park, local schools, the police, the youth community projects. So there's a varied group of people on the board, and as I said, they met earlier, I say this week, last week, and obviously had their first meeting, and then there's actions, and then we've agreed to meet again in October to bring back an update on those actions, and then obviously once there's anything to report to council, that will come back to full council.
Thanks, Gary.
Well, that's reassuring. If nothing else. How many are on the steering group?
I think without going back into the invite, I think there was 13 invited, and I think there was 8 of us that turned up.
13. Yeah.
13, all right. Okay.
Kerry, Paul, can I ask in that regard? I mean, I read that letter as well with the pack, and has there been communication with the lottery about the fact that there has been a delay in part due to Steve's untimely passing?
Yeah, so I can answer that question for you. There has been communication, and they are aware, obviously, that Steve unfortunately passed away, and that I've only started in July, and that I am embedding into the role. So they are aware that we are working towards the goals of the requirement of the grant, and they've been quite supportive of that.
Ah, good. So we haven't got the bailiffs at the door quite yet.
No.
Good. Well, I don't think there's anything that finance need to be concerned about. I was prepared to use the finance stroke compliance, so just in case anybody got difficult about it being on the agenda, I would possibly have argued the point, well, one should be compliant with compliance, and so anyway, things are in hand. That's the main thing. What we don't want is to take our eye off the ball in light of the fact that we've had issues at Underhill. So we really need to be committees need to be up to the game and be on the ball. In my view. If there's any other matters, anyone want to bring up anything else? No. No. Well, thank you for attending, Kerry and Paul, and all the councillors that are here. And and not forgetting our committee's. I am a driver.
I'm going to Bistro Pierre tonight, I'm afraid, so I won't have your company. I'm sorry about that.
Ian, do you want to stop the recording?
I will, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.